Now. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Off Screen on Film. As always, it's Yisrael, joined by Alon.
Hey, hey.
And today we will be talking about the 2004 film Wimbledon. It's Wimbledon season, and this is a movie we've had circled on our calendar for a while. It's also a very special week in Off Screen on Film history. It's the 1 year anniversary or so since our first
Mm,
episode. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in over the last 28 episodes. I believe this is the 29th. Um, and for supporting and listening and sharing and doing all those good things. Now, for some of you, you might be listening to this as you always do. For others of you, you might be viewing this in a new medium. For the 1 year anniversary. We have finally um, set upon ourselves, hopefully this comes out properly, to release the video of the podcast. And so you might be watching us right now as opposed to just
listening.
listening. And
Yeah.
in that honor, I'm dressed in festive Wimbledon gear. I threw on a
Yeah.
white polo shirt, a white hat.
I love
Alone's
it. It's excellent.
Alone's
I
wearing
just realized it right before we started. I'm like, wait a second. Is this intentional? Because you look very Tennessee right now.
Yeah, so I Alone quick we almost for a second had Alone change shirts, but we
Yeah.
decided his tennis t-shirt and
It
white
actually is
cap
a
is good
tennis
enough.
t-shirt. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're
Um,
dressed more Australian Open, I'm dressed a little bit more
that's correct.
Wimbledon.
Yeah.
I want my
Yeah.
strawberries and cream.
Although
And
I think officially this is French Open colors.
okay, French Open's
I
good
have a
too.
white one also, but I actually wore it yesterday.
You've been very
Um,
much in the Wimbledon season.
Yeah, I've been watching a little bit. Like it's hard with the time difference,
Hmm.
right? But it's always a fun time.
In my group chats, like I said last week, I get tennis info through osmosis. I've been getting
Yeah.
texts. And actually, I saw something on Twitter today, which I think ties in nicely to the movie today. I don't know if you saw this, but Andy Murray has like decided to retire from singles. Like he either lost or got hurt,
I
and he said
thought,
he's done
yeah,
from singles competition,
I thought
it
he
seemed
was,
like.
but he was not playing this tournament, right? I thought he had to bow out,
He had to
or am I
bow
wrong?
out and then announced his unless they meant retired in the um like the he had to retire from the match
Like
and
he's
not
injured.
retire.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Could
not
be.
sure.
I should know.
When I
I'll
saw
look it up.
the news update this morning, I took retired to mean literally, but he is playing the doubles thing. So maybe they just meant
Oh yeah, I think you're right. Because it says his match was canceled today, but that could be a.
it says he pulled
Oh
out.
yeah, no, you're right. He pulls out of Wimbledon singles and he's gonna do the doubles only. Okay.
So, but does that mean he's not playing singles anymore? I'm not sure. Yeah, his
No, I think
final
it's like you
Wimbledon. He announced
said.
this is his final Wimbledon.
Oh, so it could be. I mean, he could play the U.S. Open,
Right,
right?
right. So this is his last
Um,
season, I guess, on the tour, which has some commonalities with some of the movies we're going to talk about. I mean, a British man in
mhm,
the kind of twilight of his career a little bit,
yeah.
very much has to do with Wimbledon and some aspects of the movie Challengers that we said last week we touched upon. So why don't we get right into it, unless you have anything you want to add off the top?
No,
Okay, sounds good to me. So,
yeah. Well,
Wimbledon,
okay.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
actually,
Okay, go ahead.
I have a comment. It's kind of. Well, what are we talking about first here? Because you said
Wimbledon. We're going to talk about
okay.
Wimbledon.
So yeah, it's interesting because I've seen this movie a lot of times.
Hmm.
I just want to preface with this. I've seen this movie a lot, a bunch of times. And like I have a habit of doing that. Like if I like something, I'll just watch it. Like I'll just come back to it over and over again, right? Not necessarily like in such with such short time frames between, but like I'll always just revisit it. So like with this kind of movie, it's hard for me to give like an honest critical evaluation of it because I'm so used to it, let's say, right?
Okay.
So I just wanted to preface it with that. Not that it's a bad thing. I just wanted to
Okay.
throw that out there.
We've had movies like this before. I mean,
Yeah, I have because I
Fever
have a
Pitch comes to
tendency to
mind.
do that. Exactly. Right? Like it's
Um,
hard for me to like,
Separate the quality from the
yeah,
enjoyment or the
right, right,
emotional connection. I understand
right.
that.
Exactly. Exactly.
My relationship's a little bit different. This is a movie I had heard of, and I looked back on my phone to see when I watched it. Luckily, for the past couple of years, anytime I would watch something, I would either like text someone, "Oh, I'm about to watch this," or like just text someone right after, so I could really like pinpoint when I
Yeah.
watched certain movies. So I watched this in 2002 for the first time. 2022, sorry, 2022. So recently. Um, and it really was like an instant favorite of mine. I've only seen it one other time.
I'm curious, how did you come to How did you come to this movie?
I think it was my mother and or sister, and maybe Pinchas
Oh, really?
in
Interesting.
conjunction. They know I liked
'Cause it's not like
rom-coms.
it's
It's
not so like I'm kind of surprised that you would come to it so not. Yeah, I don't
mhm.
know. It's because it's not so. It's
My
you don't
my
hear
mother
about it
likes this
much.
movie, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Uh,
assume that she was part of the reason I saw it. I didn't watch it with her, but she had, I think, told me about it. And I think it had been on my like radar for a little bit longer, but I finally sat down to watch it in I guess the summer of 2022, so around 2 years ago. Um, and when I say it's like an instant favorite, like for a long time afterwards, it'd be like, hey, I'm about to sit down with my wife, my girlfriend, or whatever. Like, do you have a movie for me, Yisrael?
yeah.
And I'll be like,
It's a
yeah, why
good.
don't you check out Wimbledon? It's just like a good time. It's just good.
It's a good rec. Yeah.
Um, I don't know that I know a lot of people followed through on that recommendation, which hurts me a little bit, but um, it really I liked it, and I was happy. I was actually really excited to revisit it for the first time now because I've talked about this before. For a long time, I really did not rewatch movies unless it was like especially the past couple years. Like once I got
Hmm.
more into like, hey, I'm watching movies all the time. I want to watch new movies. And a lot of time I'd be like, oh, I don't know if I want to rewatch this because like maybe I won't like it as much the second time. That was part of my thought process.
Yeah.
Another part of it was like, oh, there's so many other good movies out there. I want to cover as much ground as possible. I was really glad watching this movie again, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
Smile beginning to end.
What's not to like? Yeah, exactly.
We're not
Spoiler,
doing like
you
a
know.
spoiler. I don't think
Yeah,
we're
I'm
doing like
saying
a
like,
traditional spoiler-free review on this one because it's not really like the most spoilery movie. Like if you want to
well,
watch Wimbledon without knowing anything about it, I would recommend just like tuning off. But this is not a movie that's predicated on plot twists or
no.
surprises. It really plays out how you'd expect it to play out.
Yeah,
If you want to avoid spoilers for challengers, then maybe like skip when we talk about
yeah,
challengers. But um, a little background on this movie. It kind of had solid to middling critical reception. Some people were more high on it. Some people were like average. Some people criticized its predictability or its kind of surface levelness, but it was, mid-range reviews. It was not good at the box office. It had a budget of like 31 million and only grossed 41 million apparently.
yeah.
No bueno. I don't know why this cost 31 million. I guess maybe like the tennis action, there's some big stars. I did read something about there actually being a lot of CGI in this movie, so maybe that cost a lot as well.
Yeah.
Um, like apparently a lot of the
I
tennis action is CGI.
it's kind of weird. Like, it's weird that it came out in September and not at the beginning of the summer, right? You would
That seems
think
like a
that,
misstep, yeah.
but like so obvious. Like, I don't even understand how that. I'm surprised actually because I'm looking at it now. Um, like, why would you not capitalize on? It just seems very random, right? You can't put something out about a very specific event and then
This should
not.
be a
It's like
June or July movie.
yeah, it's like it would be like releasing Halloween in February,
It's
right?
also like a
Like
good like summer date movie. It just
yeah, it's surprising. I'm like kind of surprised.
that
Like I
is odd.
wonder
I didn't catch
I,
that. That is odd.
I wonder how much that I wonder if the box I'm sure at least a little bit the box office would have benefited
I guess, but this
from
movie
having a more
needed to
timely
make like
release.
$100 million to be like profitable, essentially, somewhere in that
Well, not
range.
quite, right? Like
31
yeah.
times three. Like if we're using that times
Is
three
three? I thought it
benchmark,
was times two is the
it's
break
somewhere
even.
between two and three. Um,
Okay.
we've waffled on this number, but I've heard differing opinions. So let's say it needed to make between like 70 and 100 million to be profitable. That's a tall task.
Yeah, but why release this in September? I'm
We
very
haven't done
confused
this in
by
a while, but I'm curious
that.
about the other movies of 2004. Um, we haven't gone through the box office of a year that we did the movie in a while, but now I'm kind of curious what the big hits were that summer. So I'm just going to pull up the box office numbers for 2004
Also, just
quickly.
just for context here, not that they could have predicted this before the movie came out, but the 2004 Wimbledon men's final, Roger Federer won and he beat Andy Roddick, an American.
Hmm.
I have to think this movie gets a boost if it comes out in June, July, in
Because
July,
you're
let's
saying
say,
that
of
American interest in tennis would have been higher potentially.
yeah, yeah, because that's like when Andy Roddick was like very was competitive. Roger Federer still wasn't the. I mean, he was dominating, I think, at that point, but not the.
The box office was good this year. I'm looking like 70 movies made over 72 movies worldwide made over
Hmm.
70 million dollars. I don't know
Say that
why I
again?
picked that back. 70 movies around made 70
Yeah.
or more million dollars. So there was a lot, like 55 movies made more than $100 million.
I'm telling you, it's a big blunder that it came out in the middle end of September. Yeah, it makes no sense actually.
It's odd. It's a big
That
overstep. I mean, I could pull this list up.
this is my nitpick. This
Should
counts as my
should I share
nitpick.
my screen for the people at home potentially? Let me try to get my screen
What do
up.
you want to throw up there?
I want to throw up the over here, the movies
Like
that
in the
came.
UK, it came out
So
September 20. Yeah.
let's say it would have made, I mean, there's no reason this couldn't have made as much as 13 going on 30, or like close to it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like it's well, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a good
I
movie.
mean,
I like that movie, but Catwoman made $82 million.
although I
dollars.
will say like 13 going on 30 is more of a
Like
typical
teenage rom-com.
rom-com that's going to attract more like, I think
That's fair. That's fair. Um, I'm just going through this. A lot of solid
50
movies
First
this
Dates,
year.
yeah.
Starsky and Hutch is a movie that I like. Kill Bill 2, Dodgeball. Are you a Dodgeball fan?
Yeah, not like you know,
Wait, this was a massive year for Ben Stiller. He had Dodgeball, Starsky and Hutch, and he had Along Came Polly.
a lot of good movies. Collateral.
That's a good year. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe it
So
was smart to release it then because it wouldn't get lost in them. What I'm
maybe,
assuming was
yeah,
a heavy summer,
I'm gonna stop the share,
right? Like
but
Collateral came out in August. Yeah, they should
I
have done this in
it still
whatever.
seems like a
Anyway.
mistake. I agree with you. So this movie, like when you look at the Wikipedia page, like it looks like a movie that like people haven't seen. Like the Wikipedia page is like kind of sparse. Like it's very interesting, but
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm surprised that you came to it so late. I guess if somebody likes it and they suggest it to you, it makes sense. But
yeah,
it's kind of a random but underrated movie, right?
yeah. In terms of like, we both have kind of espoused our love for this movie. You kind of said it's hard for you to separate your critical opinion.
Mhm.
For me, it's not as hard. I didn't write my review for this yet, but it would get like a not cinema probably. I like the movie. It wouldn't get a number score because I've seen it before, but my only complaint, and this is kind of nitpicky, is that I feel like a bunch of like the small like garnishes, as I'll call them, are kind of unnecessary and almost clutter the movie. So, like, to name a few things, there's this thing with the comet, and there's like the thing with the parents going on, and there's like kind of some of the stuff with the brother. And I do like a lot of those things, but it almost feels like there was more that was cut out. And at certain points, it feels a little bit like, oh, there's this thing they mentioned like 45 minutes ago that like
Yeah.
only gets mentioned one other time. Specifically, like the comet thing, which I'll talk about in a second. It has thematic relevance, which I won't go too deep into like what this movie's themes are because it's not really about that, but they do like lay them out pretty clearly.
Yeah. It's a fair criticism or comment, I'd say. Like there's a lot of extra stuff going on the side that like doesn't really like why like the brother one is a good call. Like what so unnecessary.
It's
Like
very British. He really fits in, and this will get into like some of,
maybe
if you
that's
like
the
this, you like
point.
that.
Yeah.
He really feels like the side characters in these other like Hugh Grant movies or some of these other movies. There's
It's
always
funny that
like,
you say that because that's what I was gonna say is like we can talk about it now because it's more of a general
right.
comment. But I was gonna say that that if you were to like this feels very much like a Richard Curtis movie, right?
So
So
which
that
movies has he made?
so you're talking like Notting Hill, Four Weddings and a Funeral.
Yeah, Notting Hill is one of my
Um,
picks.
yeah, so this kind of feel it's obvious, right? Because it's whenever
Yeah,
even though he's not a complete unknown individual like Hugh Grant is in Notting Hill, like Hugh Grant is a bookstore owner and
right.
and Julia Roberts is a famous actress. Like here, okay, at least this guy is a tennis pro, he's a
Yeah.
professional. Um,
He's
but yeah, you're right. Like the James McAvoy role feels very
and I'll say this, Paul Bettany, who's an actor that I really haven't seen so much of besides like his Marvel work. Like he is like he has a pretty full filmography, but like I
yeah.
haven't seen most of his stuff. And he kind of feels like he could have been one of like the weird friends in like a Notting Hill movie or like one of
Well, he
kind of
kind
like
of yeah, he does have that. I'm trying to think. I think he does have a couple roles like that.
or, while you're looking,
Yeah, I'm going
I'll
through
say
here.
that like he he does a good job. He's also very credible as a tennis player in this movie, which I think
He's really good in it.
works. He does a
He's
really
re
good job. Kirsten Dunst, so I don't mind in this movie. I won't necessarily say I like or dislike. I kind of she's fine. I'm not such a fan of hers in general. Necessarily not a fan, but like I'm neutral. She's not such a credible tennis player, and I think that's part of the reason there's basically no tennis action of her because she's quite short actually for a tennis player. She's 5'5".
eh,
Like tennis
I
players
would,
are really tall. I looked this up. Maria Sharapova was 6'2".
but that's now I'm curious. Like, I don't know if it's a. I see what you're saying, but I kind of like. I actually kind of think she was well cast.
She does a good
Yeah,
job as the character. Like she's fine.
yeah,
Like I'm wondering if there could have been someone more credible on the tennis aspect. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know enough about tennis to be like, or women's tennis especially to be like what makes someone
yeah.
like a tall kind
Well,
of
let's check.
lanky guy looks like a male tennis player. There's lots of like tall lanky tennis players. That's kind of like the ideal build for a male tennis player, correct?
Let's see. Let's see who the top. So yeah, I mean the number one woman in the world is 5'9". Um,
Coco Gauff is like 5'10" or something.
is she
Serena Williams.
5'10"?
Yeah, I looked her up this morning.
Yeah,
Serena
also.
Williams is quite tall as well, I believe. Um, so like, I mean,
Yeah,
five five's
yeah,
kind of
you're right.
short. It's kind of short. Now it's not so like I didn't know she was short from the movie, but like I had a feeling she's probably not like actual tennis player size. So that's just like a
But who
very
else would you cast in that that's of that height?
I don't know. I don't know. So that's why it's really not like a big issue. I want to highlight that I think he does really like he's really even though he's not necessarily so athletic seeming in the movie, he has the build at least of a tennis player.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think that's by design and making him like a little bit
kind of
stretched out and always like
yeah.
late to the ball, clumsy kind
And
of.
he's a little old. He's supposed to be. I mean, he's
Yeah,
32, so he's not like. It's funny because now, like we're used to like our best athletes, especially best tennis players, playing, you know, till they're almost 40. But this is not the first time in a movie that we've talked about where it's like a tennis player's like 32 and he's all washed
I
up.
mean
And
like
Match Point is the same thing. He's like off the tour by the time. Like he's meant to be like 31.
32 when this movie came out 20 years ago. Wow, it's just crazy. Like 32 is ancient in tennis years
And now
back
it's
then,
really not.
especially.
And
No, it's
now
not. But so
so
it's
I
not
think
like
that's fair. It's
yeah,
accurate to the time. I don't it feels like now when I'm like, oh, he's only 32, okay, but like, Novak Djokovic is how old? 35 or something,
I
and
think
he's like
35 or
he's
yeah,
like the best player in the world or a
maybe
top four
36, maybe
player or
36.
something.
That's true.
It is a young man's game, but like we're so used to like the last decade or so, it kind of
Increasingly
not
less so though. He's
being
37. He
yeah.
just turned
So
37.
the last decade or so of tennis has been kind of handled mainly by I mean Djokovic has played a big part of it. So I guess from 27 to 37 he's been one of the best players in the world, but Federer was good in the last decade and Nadal was still pretty good in the last decade. So and those guys were definitely older.
Yeah.
Um but overall I like this movie quite a bit. I really don't have anything like bad to say. It's really like just smile on the face beginning to
Yeah,
end.
it's very easygoing. It's very you're right. There's not much bad to say.
It's not
It's
mean-spirited at all.
no, why would it be though? It's
I don't
exactly what
know.
you expect it to be,
That's
right?
why I like
Like
it. I think sometimes
it leans nicely into it
like
also.
sometimes
Like there's
sports movies are a little bit like cynical. This movie's not cynical,
yeah,
really.
because you're right. It's because it very much is. We talked about this, I think,
Fever
when we were
pitching for
talking
love of the
about
game.
yeah. But like this still is very much a sports movie.
Oh, this is definitely a sports movie.
Like can I make a comment about Challengers now? Or do you
Yeah.
want to save it?
Make a
Because I
comment
was
about
gonna say, like, I've
challengers.
been thinking about Challengers a lot since I saw it a couple of weeks ago. Even though, like, at you know, at face value, it seems like it's very much a tennis movie. It really isn't.
I
Like,
I
you know
sort
what I
of agree
mean?
with you because the stakes are
Like,
not about tennis. The stakes are
yeah,
like about something totally
it's just
else.
it's a side character. It's a tool, right? To
I
like,
would never call challengers a sports movie, even though there are probably just as many like tennis
I
scenes.
agree. I agree. Here, the competition is I guess okay. You could argue in that finals, whatever. I don't want to spoil Challengers, but um. I agree with what you said. It's not a sports movie.
It's
It's
interesting
sports
because
adjacent.
I was looking up tennis movies, right?
Yeah.
We have challengers, we have this movie, we have Match Point is sort of a tennis movie, but not really, but sort of us
Similar kind of
to
similar,
Challengers.
yeah, using it as a tool more.
But
Whereas
even
this,
way
it feels more
less, or
central.
even way less because it's not like there's very little active tennis played in Match Point.
Yeah, I agree. If the title was something different, it almost wouldn't be.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? If you're right, Challengers is more of a tennis movie than Match
for
Point.
sure. And then there's other ones. There's the one with like 7 Days in Hell or something, which is like the Andy Samberg movie. I've never seen it.
It's actually funny. I like it a lot.
And then there's the one
It's a parody movie, kind
yeah.
of, right? Yeah.
And then there's the other one about like you've mentioned this movie to me before, this other tennis
With Borg
movie.
and McEnroe.
Yeah. And
With
then
yeah, it's good.
there's the Emma Stone tennis movie. So there are a decent amount of tennis movies.
King
King
Richard
Richard is a
was a more
tennis
recent one, which
movie.
is
I
also pretty good.
never
Like
seen it, but I heard good things.
tennis does
Um,
well on screen.
I think
That's
it
what I was
does.
thinking. It
It's a
does. It
very
does. There's something about it. Whereas golf, like when we did what was that? What was it called? The greatest game ever played?
the most boring movie ever made.
Yeah, like for
The
some
greatest
reason
game ever played, yeah.
tennis does really well on screen and golf just doesn't. And I like both of
Golf.
them.
So
But it does
I heard something interesting about golf. There's a famous movie, Legend of Bagger Vance.
yeah,
Apparently the golf action in that movie's very bad,
with
and
Will
there's like
Smith, right?
Will Smith and Matt
Yeah.
Damon. Up like I guess it's just very obvious if someone has an awful golf swing and it makes everything look totally off. And then if they have a bad golf swing, they have to kind of
Yeah.
like cut around it. Tennis, a lot of times the action is like they're tracking the ball over the net. You're not focusing
Yeah,
as much
yeah.
on the swing and
hmm
things like that. Also, it's a little bit easier maybe to get doubles in there for certain things like
Yeah.
stunt doubles. Also, it's a
Still, I
one-on-one sport. So like as opposed to basketball or football, which requires the coordination of like teams of people pretending to do something, it doesn't translate itself well.
yeah. But still, there should be a way to do it.
It's hard. I've seen some really
I
bad basketball scenes.
Oh,
Really bad.
but I'm saying there should be a way to do a good golf movie. I don't buy it.
There
Like
should be.
there's
There should, I mean, Tin
yeah.
Cup is supposed to be good, and I think part of it
Oh,
is
Tin Cup is
because
good, but
I think part of it
you
is
know,
because Kevin Costner is a very legitimate athlete.
okay. So that's what I was gonna say. Like, is he an actual golf, not professional, but does he actually know how to golf? Right? Like,
It seems like he's a credible golfer.
there's
He was
ways
like
I'm sure
he
you
was like
can
a
do
high
it.
level athlete. I believe he might even played
Right.
college baseball or something. Like he's a
Right.
real
Right.
athlete. So like that makes sense to me. Um, I don't remember thinking Shia LaBeouf's swing was good or bad necessarily. I can't really remember. They did a lot of like trappings in that movie, probably to
Yeah.
distract you from his actual swing.
Yeah.
But I do believe the tennis action in this movie is pretty good. I was a little bit upset to find out, like, and again, this was a very cursory, like, glance at some things, so maybe this isn't true. But really, the only actual hitting of the ball is the serves, and the rest is like they just CGI'd the ball in. It almost doesn't sound true. I don't even know where I read that, but I read that the
I
other
could see
day.
it.
It seems
I
pretty
could
like
see
how
it.
do you like? I don't know. It just seems hard to do. I'm not sure, but the movie does look good. The tennis action does look good.
hmm
Um,
It just works.
it
Tennis
works. It's just
works
a good
on
movie. It's
screen.
just and
Yeah.
it's a good romantic comedy. I mean, a lot of times when a romantic comedy or a romantic plot doesn't work, my number one criticism will be like, "Oh, everything feels so fast." In this movie, it doesn't feel fast, even though it is like a 2 week period. Like,
It only feels fast because, like, and I was actually thinking that, as I said, even though I said before, I have no new thoughts on these things because I've seen them so many times, but she kind of is into him out of nowhere, which you would expect the other way around, right? Usually in these movies, it's the guy falls for the girl very quickly and without basis other than instant
so
attraction,
they
right?
explain.
She's like, seems to be all over him right
So
away.
they gave the like, oh,
Am I
he
wrong?
she saw. I agree. She saw
Yeah.
him on TV once doing something like chivalrous, so she liked that. I do think there's some of the like maybe you're supposed to come across with like she's a really high ranked tennis player. He's like kind of lower level. Maybe to her, he's like a plaything a little bit. Like maybe that's like the initial vibe. And this is where I want to throw in Challengers a little bit. Because when I was watching this movie, and Challengers is a movie that I liked. I didn't like the end of that movie, but I for the most part liked that movie.
I guess.
Um this movie had certain similarities to it. Now, I looked online to see if there's any like possible way that this was an inspiration in any way.
Yeah.
I found no confirmation.
Yeah.
It's also hard to search because if you search the word Wimbledon and challengers, it'll like come up
Yeah,
with like real
it's
Wimbledon stuff
yeah.
and like the real stories that inspired it as opposed to the movie. Here's some of the things that I'm just going to throw out there. First of all, Lizzie being kind of like a hothead, aggressive female player is a little bit like Tashi Duncan, who is
But
played
she's
by
much
Zendaya.
Ta- Tashi Zendaya is way more stoic in challengers. Like there's no you're getting nothing, right? Like
I mean, but she when
outside
she
of the
play,
intensity,
yeah,
right? Of the
I'm just
competitive
talking about on the
intensity.
court, like the hothead.
Okay. Okay.
Fine, maybe not this that. Peter kind of like being like down on his luck, not living up to his potential thing. I mean, that's a common theme, but there's overlap between him and the Josh O'Connor character a little bit in that sense, a little bit potentially. Here's like the things that like really reminded me of the movie. Okay, there's the sauna scene, and we're deep into spoilers of Wimbledon. There's the scene after Peter Colt, played by Paul Bettany, defeats his friend um, Dieter, played by
Peter, yeah.
Nikolai Coster-Waldau, aka Jamie Lannister from Game of Thrones. He beats his friend and partner,
I'm
and they're
watching.
spending time in the sauna together. And
Yeah.
it's slightly homoerotic, that scene, much like
Is
the
it?
sauna. It felt very like they're leaning up. They're both just in towels.
Well,
They're
yeah.
like, and maybe I was just viewing it that way because I thought of like the Challenger
Of
scene. They're
challengers.
both in their sauna and they're like leaning up close to each other and talking. It's a much different tone. But I was
Yeah.
like, and maybe it's just a thing that tennis players go into saunas. I go into a sauna, so maybe
I
that's just
mean,
a
no, I
thing.
feel like a lot of athletes do, but
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because
maybe tennis clubs, like the tennis clubs they have these things that have like sauna steam rooms, or they probably do. So it's nothing crazy, but it's just that moment reminds me of a pretty memorable scene in Challengers where
yeah,
they're like kind of up in each other's face and they're having a much more friendly
and
conversation
they're
with
in
the
the
characters in
sauna.
Challengers, and they're in the sauna.
Yeah.
Now, a big difference, I guess, in Challengers is that these guys are naked, and this movie is not like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Different, yeah.
yes, and that movie, there's like a lot of homoeroticism throughout the movie. This movie like is
Yeah.
not like that at all. This just that
No,
one
no.
moment kind of felt a
That's
little
very
like
central to challengers,
yeah,
not to
this felt
this.
like
Yeah.
bromancy more. Um, Another moment is when they're having when Peter Colt is having his comeback at the end of the game, and they start like having a montage of points. They play this music that kind of feels like the Challengers theme. It's kind of like synthy. It's a little bit less intense, but it's got like an
I'll have
electric
to go
like
back and
synth
listen.
vibe.
Challenger soundtrack is awesome.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
So like
Just by
that
the
moment really reminded
way.
me of the Challengers montage where they're playing and the synth music is playing, and I was like, okay, um,
Yeah, I could see that.
I again,
But
it wouldn't be
part of me
crazy. I
is like,
mean,
there's no, there's zero. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the writer, director, whatever of Challengers ever didn't see Wimbledon. Like,
I don't. Here's the thing: if you're writing a movie about a sport,
yeah,
and there's only like 7 movies about it, that like major movies, are you not
yeah.
going to just watch every movie?
No,
I don't know.
I'm purposely
Are you
not gonna
purposely not
watch
going
it.
to?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Because then it's gonna start. Those ideas are gonna start infusing. You're right. Like, no, I purposely wouldn't. I don't
Okay.
think.
Interesting. Interesting note about Challengers. Um, he is dating or married to or the partner of the person who wrote and directed um Past Lives.
Who's he?
The guy, the writer of the screenwriter of Challengers.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Notice how both movies are about like stunted like love triangles. Very interesting for
Yeah,
various
interesting,
reasons.
actually.
There
Yeah.
was like media speculation that it's like based off their relationship somehow. I don't know. I don't know what to go too deep in that because I don't know. But if you want to look at more about that, that's fine. I also want to make another point. So in this movie, a thing that I think they do very well, which a lot of sports movies sometimes fumble on, maybe they go a little too far, but I think for the most part it's good. It's belief. So at the end of this movie, Wimbledon, Peter Colt wins Wimbledon. Okay.
Hmm.
He starts off as ranked 119th in the world. Okay. That's realistic. I looked it up once a couple of years earlier. This guy, Goran, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, like even I can't even pronounce his name.
Ivanovich?
Yeah, him. He did something similar. He was 30 years old and ranked 125 in 2001.
Ivanisevich.
Yes.
Ivanisevich.
So he
That's what
was
it is. Yeah.
around the same age, ranked around the same 3 years prior. He won Wimbledon. So that there's precedent for that. It's
Yeah.
also kind of believable that he was like one him being ranked 11th in the world seems a little bit high, but fine. Like I'm
No,
willing to believe it. Um,
but by the way, I don't think that is. I actually think that's very believable because, like we were saying,
mhm.
in 2004, if you're 32, you are well past your prime in tennis at that point, before Roger Federer and Rafael
My
Nadal
point is though,
and then Djokovic start to change that. being ranked 11th for a short amount of time, I think he says like the better part of 96 or whatever he
Yeah,
says, right? Is pretty believable because I think there was a lot more
shifting of the rankings.
it was a lot more transient the rankings,
Oh,
right? Like things were
interesting.
people were coming in and out, in and out.
But
Um,
do you think it's believable that someone 119 could win Wimbledon?
well, I was going to say that it's believable because just a bad injury could derail your ranking very quickly, right? Because I think
Right.
the way it works is your ranking your ranking is evaluated based on what how you performed in each tournament the year before.
So maybe he had a
I
bad,
think
maybe he
that's
had
how
a
it
really bad
works, right?
year. Okay, so that's
Yeah, so like
possible.
it's not so now it wouldn't happen, I don't think, because there's too much dominance at the top,
Hmm.
right? Like, and maybe I'm not remembering correctly. I don't know. This is where we could use a Pinchas who has more. I don't know. Is Pinchas a ten? He knows
He
about
knows tennis.
tennis.
He's not a
Yeah,
tennis fan.
but I think at that point, like early 2000s, we're kind of in a dead tennis zone
Hmm.
between like the Agassi,
And the
um,
Federer era.
yeah, like Agassi and Sampras, like that kind of era winding
Hmm.
down, and then moving into the Federer, Nadal, and then Federer, Nadal, Djokovic era, right?
Okay,
I
that
think,
makes
I
sense.
think, like,
To me, I thought it was a nice touch that it wasn't like, you know what, this literally happened a couple years earlier than the movie, and that I'm probably some level of the inspiration. But then, and then
it could be. I mean, yeah,
for Lizzie,
yeah,
they say at the end of the movie that she won the U.S. Open and Wimbledon twice, so she's like a high level player.
yeah,
She's probably like one of the best women's players in her short
yeah,
career.
yeah.
Um, I don't know enough about tennis to compare her to any player.
I
Um,
mean, see, this is the problem, right? Because not problem. This is the thing with tennis is that in the last like let's say 20 years, it used to be, I'm not saying it's not impressive now, but it used to be that if you had like three, four, five, whatever major or Grand Slams under your belt, that was like incredible, right? And you
and
were at the
now it's
top
like you
of
need like
historically, you
20.
were at the top, right?
I'm very glad you're
But
bringing this
now,
up.
now it's been changed because like you look at someone like John McEnroe, he never won the French Open. He never won the French Open. I don't think he ever won the Australian Open because they didn't play it really back then.
Mhm.
So he has a cup. I think he won Wimbledon three times. I think he won the U.S. Open three times. Maybe I don't know, something like that.
So
He's
he has
got
like
six or
eight or
seven.
something, or seven or
I
eight.
don't even
Okay.
think it's eight. I think it's like six or seven.
And he's considered
And
one of
at
the
the
best.
yeah, right. Like, but now it's like Federer's
This
got 20. Nadal's got
this leads me to one of
23
my
or something.
big
Yeah.
nitpicks in Challengers. Okay, they explain that Mike Feist's character, what's his name again in the movie in Challengers? He's Art Art Donaldson.
Art
He had
Donaldson.
won six majors in basically 10 years. The movie takes place
Yeah.
over like 10 years from his pro
Right.
career. He had won six majors in 10 years,
Yeah.
right? He's one of the best tennis players in the world
Yeah.
over those 10 years, especially if you factor in
Well,
that when the movie's taking place, it's over like Nadal Federer's reign. So
yeah.
in that fictional universe, if they exist, like he's taking
But
away
yeah,
some
they
from
might not
them,
exist, right?
or they do exist and he's beating them and he took
Yeah,
some
it
away
could
from
be.
them,
Could be,
right?
right?
So he's like the best player of those 10 years, or
And there were guys like that, by the way, who would come in and take one here and there, right?
yeah,
But
but
not
like,
common.
but it's not just one here or there. He's averaging one a year basically.
Well, you said he won
He
six,
won
right?
six in 10 years, but
Compared
they
to
said
those
he would,
guys, six is nothing.
but then
Like,
he had said he had been like he, six. My point is that if you're an American tennis player who had won six
yeah,
things,
yeah.
you would be by far the best American tennis player ever, basically.
No, well,
Who had won, fine,
Pete
Pete
Sampras
Sampras.
is,
You'd
yeah.
be a top two or top three American tennis player ever,
You'd be a top five, let's say.
and you would be the best, or you'd be
Because
like
there's
a top,
others,
you'd be
right?
one of the
Jimmy
best 10.
Connors,
Okay.
DeAndre Agassi. Like there are a
I
few
don't know
that,
enough about tennis to make these
right?
definitive points. So, but you'd
Yeah.
be one of the best players over those 10 years, and I feel like he was not getting that respect in
Oh,
that
you
movie
definitely would be. You're right. You definitely would be the best American player in that time frame because there
for
aren't.
sure. There's only
It just
Andy
no one's Andy Roddick.
Roddick, and he had won once.
He's the last American to win a Grand Slam, which was like
Yeah.
2004 or something,
So this
right?
guy would be like one of the biggest American athletes, and like they treat him with somewhat respect, but they're a little bit harsh on him, even for someone who had been
Let's
like on a
yeah.
downside of his career. Like people still like when Tiger Woods goes to play golf, like it's still like the biggest deal, and Tiger Woods hasn't won.
It's different. I think it's a little different
Because Tiger Woods
because
is like the GOAT.
two things are different. One, I think golf is just more popular in the United States than tennis is from a spectator and for sure from an act. I think not for sure
Hmm.
from a participation standpoint. Also, two, yeah, like Tiger Woods, you can argue Tiger Woods is the best golf player ever, and no one will really dunk on you for that. Like the other, it's either him or Jack Nicklaus, right? So
Right.
like, and they're both American. So this tennis is a little different because, um, you know,
Do you
because it's
think
true.
they made Art too good? Is basically my question. Did they give him
No.
too many wins?
Well,
Basically,
I have
like
other nitpicks in that I would say if someone like Art, if there's someone as good as Art is, you're not going to Stanford to play college tennis. You're
right.
turning pro right away. Like this
Well,
is not
well, I think the point was he wasn't that good yet, and then he was like pretty good, and then Tashi
it
made him
it
better.
doesn't
Is like the
really work.
idea,
I don't think it really works like that. I have to go back and look and see how many major winners attended played in a college program, but
also, also
it's not
Tashi, that was
not
another
a
plot
thing. Like
nitpick. Tashi goes for 1 year and she's like, if we win the championship, I'm going to leave
it
after one
makes
year.
no
But she said
sense.
she wanted to
She
go to
would
college because she wanted an
yeah,
education. It made no
I'm
sense.
sorry. Because we're right that tennis is such a young person's game. You don't waste 4 years going to college to perfect your tennis
Right.
game. If you're good enough to go pro at 21, you're good enough to go pro at 16, 17.
So who's
Look
better?
at Coco Gauff, right?
Right.
Like
Who's
so,
better? Peter Colt or Josh O'Connor's character?
well, by definition, I mean Peter Colt is better, right?
Okay.
He
Peter
wins
Colt's better.
he wins the most prestigious tournament, right?
Fine.
Like
Before that, what? Before the week before Wimbledon 2004,
yeah.
who's better?
Well, he was ranked 11th in the world,
Right.
right?
He's definitely way
What's
better.
the highest ranking
Correct?
of Zweig in
Not that high. Great
I
character though.
I
Josh
think it
O'Connor,
did they mention it? I think they do mention it.
they do.
Maybe like 200 or something.
Yeah. Josh O'Connor, by the way, as you know, I'll announce it on the pod if I haven't already. Like I own stock in Josh O'Connor. I got some pushback when I told people, hey, he's one of the next guys up.
I'm into him.
I'm not saying he's
Yeah,
like
I
Tom
agree with
Cruise and
it.
like that type of guy, but he's getting like the Paul Mescal, Barry Keoghan push, the Austin Butler push, and it's a little bit more artsy movies.
Yeah.
Like he's that guy. Like
I think there's a magnetism about him that I
there's
like.
that guy.
I loved him in that
My
movie.
friends were
But
kind
I'm
of like
surprised that people are kind of crapping on that movie a lot on Reddit.
challengers.
Yeah.
I think I'll explain why. I mean, first of all, I think it thinks it's much smarter than it actually is. That's first of all. I'm just gonna throw that
But
out
then
there.
that's the viewer's fault for taking things too seriously.
I agree, but you're the one who's
Like
turned the ending into a comedy when I don't think it was meant to be that way.
no, I don't think it's a comedy. I
Like
think it's funny.
you find it funny. I found
I
it
find it
like
cheeky. I find it
I don't
like
think it
I
was
find
meant to be
it
that way. So that's why I think it's like, okay.
no, I don't think it was meant to be like, okay, I'm gonna end off with the audience laughing out loud in their seats. But I do
Yeah.
find it a bit funny and I like it. Because it's just so ridiculous. It's just kind of like
I
this whole thing is
understand, but
ridiculous,
to me it's
and this
like
is just the
deflating.
cherry on the top of the sundae of ridiculousness.
As opposed to the
And
ending of this movie, which I think like leaves you with a good taste in your mouth, more or less. That movie left me with
but a
bad taste.
predictable taste. How would you have preferred that Challengers ended?
I don't know, but not the way it ended. Not the way it ended.
But
I
it
don't want
kind
to.
of makes sense. It kind of makes sense, right? The fact that you could easily see them after they jump embrace each other. Am I spoiling it?
Let's not spoil it.
Okay, fine. Okay, so sorry.
Let's
Okay,
move off challengers just because we have a
fine.
lot to talk about
Okay.
with what's it called. Maybe if there's sufficient demand, we'll talk more about challengers next time. But I agree. I think that challengers does get a lot of hate, but a lot of people also love it. I think also people are a little bit tired of the like cynicism in movies to compare it to this movie, which is not cynical at all. Every movie now, it's like every character has to be like a piece of trash or else no one
Yeah.
cares. And like people are a
Was it
little bit
you who
tired of
could?
that. I was the one who
Was
said
it
that. I
you who could? Was you
compared it to
compared it to
Succession
Saltburn?
and
Oh, I
Saltburn.
thought.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
Saltburn.
yeah.
I
Okay. It's a
said
good call.
I said it
Yeah,
has a Saltburn core. This is the thing
yeah.
I've been saying recently. It's a vibes movie. I thought Saltburn was a vibes movie. I think Challengers is a vibes movie. I think in a different way, Bike Riders is a vibes movie. But sometimes you want a little bit more than just a vibes movie, right?
I don't know. We walked out of Challengers and we were just kind of like, that was awesome. We're
Yeah,
like, we
because
don't know
it's good
what.
vibes. I like that movie.
We literally said, like, we don't know why, but that was awesome.
I
Like that was
like
just
that
fun.
movie.
Like,
we talked about Peter Colt, the player. We talked about Lizzie Bradley, the player, played by Kirsten Dunst. I'll say this:
Bradbury,
Bradbury.
I think,
Uh,
right?
yeah, you're right, right. When she loses in her match and then she kind of like blames him, like it fits the character, but like, grow up.
Yeah, but like also this kind of his fault.
Is
Like,
it?
well, I mean, he was distracting her.
It wasn't distracting her 2 days ago.
It takes two to tango, I agree, but
Yes. Even though I guess he did, she could have told him to leave, like,
yeah, he was whatever. She was young and
how
but
old
she
is she
ended up,
supposed to be?
I'm assuming, no older than 20,
You think she's supposed to be 20?
21 maybe.
Because when I watched the first time,
These
I
these these tennis players are young. Like when they're coming up like this and they're the
I'm
hot new thing
surprised
in
more
town, they're young.
I'm surprised there weren't more comments about age difference, more age difference jokes in the movie then, because he's supposed to be 32.
Yeah, but
I could have seen her being like 22, 23, but I
maybe
also
23. These guys are young. Like think about like a guy like Alcaraz now. Like how old is he? These people,
20.
these players that come on the scene, that's what I'm saying about challengers, that the college thing is just ridiculous. If you're good enough to be a
She's
successful
21.
pro, if you're good enough to be a successful pro, you're not going to play. I don't think, maybe I'm missing something. I don't think you're going to play college tennis. Whatever. Anyway,
Okay.
enough of that. Enough of me.
I mentioned before one of the better part of this movie is like the kind of the side characters. Jon Favreau playing Ron Roth,
Yeah,
great side character. I have
yeah.
a comment about him. Is he the best agent ever? He represents every major tennis player. He
There's
represents
guys like
Lizzie.
that, I feel like.
He represents Lizzie. He represents the young dickhead Jake Hammond, who's
I
supposed
think
to be
that's kind of the funny, that's the
he's
point,
supposed to be
right?
number one in the world, by the way, Jake
Yeah,
Hammond. I'll get to that in a minute. He's just representing everyone. So he's just an unbelievable agent. I will say there's a joke at the end of the movie where his phone rings at a crucial moment. I didn't think
yeah.
that was necessary. I didn't mind it, but I felt like we don't need that laugh there. Just gonna throw
Yeah,
that
I
out
didn't
there.
mind that. I didn't mind
Sam
that.
Neill is Dennis Bradbury. What do you think of Sam Neill in this movie?
Yeah, he's fine. Very serious, obviously.
He's
But that's
less of
his,
a
that's his whole, that's
shtick.
always Sam Neill. Is he's like
Yeah.
very, like think about Jurassic Park 2, Sam Neill. Or is that 3?
Is he not in the
2.
first one?
Is he in the first one? Yeah,
I
he
think
is in
he's
the
in the
first
first
one.
and
You're
third
right. Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
He's
He
in
is
the
in the
first and
first one.
third one, I
Yeah.
believe. He's less of a jerk than I remember. He's still a jerk, but like he's not so bad. James
It's
McAvoy is very
true.
funny in this movie. Oh, sorry, you were
It's
gonna say something?
true. I no, because you're right. I thought like when that scene where like he goes to Peter's apartment by the sea, wherever they are,
Yeah,
the southeast of I don't know, southwest, I don't know. I thought he was gonna for some reason I thought he was gonna like lace into him. I
he
remember
really
him like and
doesn't.
he really doesn't. Like he kind of is pretty reasonable.
Like
Like
I thought he was gonna be like, oh, like you're a nothing and like
yeah,
you're
yeah.
nobody and never was. Like he doesn't do any of that stuff really.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
okay. James McAvoy is Carl Colt, very funny side role. He's always betting against his brother. The whole like he's like a cyclist for some reason is like so specific. It's funny. I
But I
don't
do
really
agree it's unnecessary. Like
it
it's
feels like there
weird.
was
Like
more to it. Like, because like there's a whole
maybe.
like two or three bits of him like watching porn like while riding his bike, like,
Yeah.
and like
Just the whole
it
thing
ends up
was
being a
weird. I don't
punchline
know.
later, but like it feels like something was cut out of the movie or like an earlier draft. Him betting against his brother is funny. I will say the part when he calls the press on his brother to like,
Well, that's how he finds them, right?
yeah, I'm like, bro, like that's not cool.
Yeah, and
Not
he kind of
cool.
just laughs it off, like "damn you," whatever his name is,
Yeah,
right?
like
Like,
that's like that's really bad.
yeah, that's pretty bad. Like
Um,
ratting your brother out to the
yeah,
paparazzi.
not great. What about Dieter Prohl? What do you think of him?
I don't know. Now that you said that at the beginning of like these unnecessary sort of like side little mini side plots, like you're right. Like I guess the performance is fine,
There's
but
a
like
lot of
adds
them, right?
nothing.
There's a lot of these like side things where it's like
Yeah,
he's good, and like I like that he plays his friend, and I also like how they don't actually show their match; they just show the before and after. I think that was
yeah.
smart. I think it adds a nice dynamic, but like it's not like a dramatic point. It's over in like three
No, and you
seconds.
never care enough about the
No.
guy Dieter to. I'm happy they didn't show the match because it would have
Hmm.
just been like, why do I care about this?
But like that's another example of it's like there's like it either the because this movie's a tight like 140.
Yeah.
I wonder if there was a draft that was
Feels
like
feels
210.
kind of longer though. I don't know.
So
There's a lot of running away from London and running back to London. Like there's a lot of moving around.
there's only one time that I wrote down like a timestamp. I said after the part when Peter hurts his back and has like
Yeah,
his big ace serve to win that round until
yeah.
the end of the movie is 40 minutes. That's a long stretch of
It's a big
like
chunk.
that's a big chunk of
Yeah.
like
I
of that
mean,
stuff happens. And that
I
really
feel
in
like
terms of
I've
story wise, there's only like he
does
has
she
relationship stuff, the
yeah.
breakup, and the last round of Wimbledon.
I think the breakup, I think the part where her dad comes to his apartment, outside of London. We're not even at the hour mark at that point yet.
No,
I don't think, right?
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It feels longer. It's tight, but it feels longer
It's I think it
in a
kind
good
of
way.
I th-
I mean that in a positive way, by the way.
I think part of it is also is that not that the pacing's off, but it's very fast and then it hits kind of like a more normal pace towards the end. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot happens
It's
in the
trying
first hour.
it's trying to capture the feeling of Wimbledon, of a major tournament, which is just a 2 week,
Yes.
sprint.
And yeah, Austin Nichols plays Jake Hammond. I don't know if I
Yeah.
buy him being the number one. I guess you're talking he seems too young, but like I guess it's a young man's game, right? That's what we said.
Yeah. I mean, how old
Um
do you think he is? Like Alcaraz is, well, I think he's
he
number
looks like
two
he's
now,
20,
but
this guy, Jake Hammond. Like he's such a jerk, and the scene when he gets punched in the face is so funny when he's like, "You're with this guy? What are you ranked? 200? I'm ranked number one." Like it's such like a
that whole scene is kind of ridiculous. I've never punched someone before. Ha ha ha. They're just
that
like
part didn't
skipping
need
away.
that
Like
part didn't and then okay, yes, and they run like there's so
you just
many
like
scenes of like
assaulted
them running
someone.
away from
Like
them
yeah.
running away from the paparazzi.
That's what I'm saying. They're always running away like this.
Yeah. What do you think of the name Peter Cult?
Also, like it's just not a thing. Like I don't believe in this tennis paparazzi world. This doesn't
Well,
exist,
what if she's
right?
like
Like,
meant to be like Coco Gauff?
but even Coco Gauff, I don't remember there being like,
I don't know. There might be paparazzi around her. I have no clue.
I don't know. I don't think paparazzi was ever chasing Roger Federer down the streets. Like,
I don't know. Maybe. I'm not sure. But I believe I'm willing to suspend disbelief on that.
yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Peter Cult. What do you think of his name?
Yeah, I don't mind it.
Is it British enough?
Yeah, I'm fine with
I
it.
think Peter is very British. The cult part, I'm not sure of. Some of the other guys had very good British names. One of the guys he plays has like the most British name ever. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but like the
Oh,
young kid he plays,
well,
like
that the one where they're rooting against him because they want a British person to win.
yes, the kid who gets hurt and then he beats anyways.
I
The kid
forget
who
his name.
he had such a British name.
Look it up.
It was like Midarvish or something like
Cavendish? Was it Cavendish? Let me
Cavendish or
see.
something
I'm
like
looking it
that.
up now
Yeah,
also.
like
Yeah.
Brett Cavendish.
Tom Cavendish.
Yeah, that's British.
Oh, he's actually the guy who played Tom Cavendish. Was it Tom?
Yeah, so I think
Yeah,
that's what he
Tom
said.
is an Australian tennis player,
Wow,
retired.
that's
Yeah.
heartbreaking to find out. I
He
didn't
actually no, his best finish was second round of the 2008 Australian Open.
I didn't mention this part yet, but we didn't talk about like the themes and stuff that I mentioned are really prevalent in the movie. There's a lot about like anxiety and fear, and I actually think like the internal anxiety monologues add a lot to the movie. I don't know what you think of them.
I find the one at the beginning where he's like, I'm afraid of the ball going past. Like he says, like, what does he say? Like, I'm not afraid of losing. I'm not afraid of this. I'm just afraid of the ball going past me. I'm like, that is being afraid of losing. Like, I don't know what you're saying,
But
right? Like, he
that
says
was not
something
his
like that,
inner
right?
anxiety monologue. That was like the opening voiceover.
Yeah. You're talking
Different.
about
I'm
like when
talking
he's
about like
talking to himself, like when his back is
yeah,
hurt, like
yeah.
just one more. Yeah.
He's like,
It actually is. I like that. I do agree. You're saying that was well done.
that was well done. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
that's
I
one of the
agree.
themes of the movies, like anxiety, fear. Like they kind of try to paint him as a previous choker, and like he hasn't been able to like give it his all. He's always been scared of like giving it his all, and now he gives it his all. The movie obviously talks about like patterns and routine all the time. There's a lot about like superstition,
Yeah.
but then there's the whole comet thing where like okay, so the comet's there for 2 weeks. That's the same 2 weeks as Wimbledon. It burns bright, but for a short period of time. It's sort of like their romance, and also it
Yeah.
burns out like when their romance burns out, sort of, and when his game almost burns out. It's a little on the nose, like kind of unnecessary. Just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, I agree.
It only like
2004, you know, that's just
again, it feels like they had a lot
yeah,
of these like threads that they kind of
yeah.
just kept in there. Um, any least favorite parts or favorite parts you want to highlight?
I think so. I do agree about the James McAvoy subplot. Like I could have done without it. Out of
But
all the mini one, I could have done without it.
I find his character funny, but I agree.
I don't even find it that fun. I don't find it like offensive. I just don't really find it
What do you think
funny.
about the opening voiceover that the movie starts with that we were just talking about? Does it set the mood well, or is it like cheap and lazy?
No, actually, I think it sets it well.
Okay.
Even though I just criticized him for saying the whole fear rant, right? But
Yeah, I'm unsure how I feel about voiceovers a lot because it feels like a cheat code to just like explain everything without having to actually like show it to us. But here it
yeah,
kind of works, especially in this kind of like movie that's almost a fairy tale. It feels like it
yeah,
makes sense
yeah.
he's
I think it's
narrating
fine.
it. This thing I actually did not like and actually upset me when I saw it in the movie. At the end of the movie, after he wins Wimbledon, it zooms out like to the globe, and then a tennis racket hits the globe like an animated Earth.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, no, no,
Yeah, it's just
no.
it felt
What is that?
like Men in
National
Black at the
Geographic.
end, like Men in Black at the end, where
Yes,
they're
it did
like
feel
playing
like
with the
that.
marbles and the
I was just like,
modeling
what? And
aliens.
then, but the thing is that it doesn't even go straight to the credits. It then goes back to Earth to like give us like a post log of what happens in
Yeah,
their
yeah, to see
life.
them playing, yeah, in New
I did
York,
not like
right?
that at all. I was very
Yeah,
anti that. Throwing that out there. I'll highlight some of the things I did like. I and I really liked most of the movie, but I only have a couple points that I really highlighted. I really like the opening credits where it's like these like rotoscoped animation where like
yeah,
you
yes,
hear the
yes.
sound of the ball and like the
I
animation
agree.
turns their head.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
cool.
very cool.
I
Yeah,
think it's rotoscoped. I'm not sure, but I think it was rotoscoped. Rotoscoped is like you kind of have like you actually shoot it and then you kind of animate based on what you filmed.
on this, yeah, very cool. I agree.
I think the scene when he's about to give his retirement speech and then he gets cut off at the press
Yeah, it's funny.
conference. I like that one. That's funny. When the guy gets punched in the face, I find that guy like what he's saying before he gets punched to be like over the top but funny. This movie
Back to
has
the retirement thing. Sorry.
yeah, no, go ahead.
Like, yeah, it's funny, but like also like with all due respect to the lower ranked players on the
No one
tour,
cares.
you never like. Well, the only argument I would say against that is that he was ranked 11th at one point.
And he's
It seems like he
British
did
and it's
have,
Wimbledon.
yeah, and it does seem like he had a decent career, right? Like, so yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Yeah.
Um,
I just can't
there.
imagine it being news that a player of that ranking is retiring. Like the whole joke is set up as this whatever.
I
Anyway,
don't know if that it would be news, but I think the press would listen to him in the post
yeah,
game
I
press
guess.
conference.
Yeah, right. That's true.
There's the airport scene, of course, rom-com with the airport scene, but they do it a little bit like for Love of the Game, where it's like the sporting event's going on and the person's kind of trying to avoid
So
it, but it's in their
classic.
face. But
Yeah,
I like the part when like the dad decides to go after Lizzie to be like, "Oh, this guy loves you. You can't just run away." And
yeah,
then
yeah,
Lizzie's watching it on the small kids like mobile TV. I like that.
yeah.
Um, I like the comeback scene, even though the guy kind of chokes a little bit too much, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Um, I like the comeback scene. That's always good. And there's a scene before the comeback starts when it starts to rain, and he just like lost a point, lost the set, and the camera goes like it's like a crane shot where the camera goes overhead and starts
Yeah,
to
I know what you're
pour.
talking about. And they
Really cool
start br
shot.
and they bring the grounds people are bringing over
Yeah,
the yeah the
really
tarp.
cool
Yeah, yeah.
shot. Best shot in the movie for sure, for sure. Anything you want I missed that you want to highlight before I go to nitpicks?
No.
Okay, nitpicks and random comments. Nitpick number one. The scene when they run away to go to like his like hometown, his like
Yeah,
seaside hometown. They run
yeah.
out of town in their like formal attire. Somehow she has like three changes of clothing with her. Like she changes clothing like
Also,
five times. Like whose clothing is she wearing?
what I want to know what time they left London because it's dark when they leave. And then she's like, "Should I stay the night?" But the sun is out. I'm confused. Unless I missed something there. Do you know what I'm talking
I
about?
assume they left like I don't know. You're right. I don't know. It was confusing.
So I was like, okay, maybe they left. Maybe they left at like 2 a.m. and now the sun is rising as they're pulling into. Weird. I don't know.
The clothing thing bothered me. They go for a run in one of those scenes. She's wearing Converse. You're a professional athlete. You're not
Yeah,
running in Converse.
right. Don't, yeah,
She
exactly.
also might have been wearing like jean shorts. I couldn't tell. You're also not
She had
running in
like a
that.
weird, very 90s hoodie, like
Yeah,
yeah, I
maybe it was
agree.
meant to be someone else's clothing, but whatever.
It's an awkward scene.
Okay. Here's another nitpick. Okay, this I remembered the scene from the first time I watched this movie because I she makes a smoothie when they're arguing.
Hmm.
Okay, when they are about to break up, she makes a smoothie. All she puts into the smoothie is some fruit and cream or milk. That's it.
What else do you put in a smoothie? I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I'm not a
I like
smoothie guy.
when I make smoothies, it's either frozen fruit or ice.
Did she put,
Usually,
was it strawberries and cream as like a play on Wimbledon? Because
maybe,
that's
but
a thing,
it
right?
looks like she puts blueberries in there also, maybe, and straw and a banana. She's making a
Okay,
smoothie, and
so
I'm
then,
just like, is that all? Is like, was it cream? Was it milk? Was it meant to be like liquidy yogurt? Like, it doesn't seem like a very good smoothie. It really bothered me the first time I
okay.
watched it.
Because if it was just strawberries and cream, then that's like a Wimbledon thing,
It
right?
wasn't. She cuts a banana into it also.
Because like when I was a kid, we used to do that. My family would eat strawberries watching it on TV.
So
Because that's what they do there, right?
growing up, my grandmother used to like be like, "Oh, you want strawberries and cream or banana and cream?" I went to
Yeah.
visit my grandmother. It's actually today her birthday. Shout out my grandmother, Bubby Rubin.
Happy
It's her
birthday.
birthday today. It's also my two uncles' birthdays that are her son-in-laws. It's also Pinchas's wife's birthday. So happy birthday to all
Oh,
four of them.
a lot
July
of
2nd,
okay.
yeah. So I was at my grandmother on Sunday visiting her, and we were all sitting there, and she's like, "Do you want bananas and cream or do you want strawberries and cream?" And it just brought me back to my childhood. Um,
Strawberries and cream at Wimbledon.
okay, here's another thing. We see the guy Jake Hammond. Is that his name? Jake Hammond.
Hmm.
He's serving before the game and he's hitting every target he wants. Is he supposed? Are you supposed
Yeah.
to think he hit the kid on purpose in the face?
It's not, I don't think it's that he hit him on purpose, that he didn't care, right? Is
Okay,
it right?
maybe.
You know what I mean?
Maybe. I.
It's that it didn't affect him,
It didn't
right?
affect him, even though he looked a little bit like, "Oops, my bad." He didn't go over to see him or anything like that. I was wondering
Right.
if it was meant to be like, did he hit him on purpose? Because that would be too evil,
I
even
think it
for
was
him.
just another way to set him up as sort of like a bad guy, even though he
Yeah.
probably isn't, right?
Nah.
Like,
Here's my biggest nitpick and comment on the movie, and it's a comment on sports movies in general. Do sports movies make their comebacks too like big? We talked about this in an episode of One Tree Hill I was talking to you about a while ago, where it's like they're down nine with like 30 seconds left and they hit like
yeah,
three threes, and it's like
yeah,
and like the way it happens is like ridiculous. And it's like, why can't you just make it like a little bit more believable? I understand there's
yeah.
drama involved, but like I
Especially
think
in
his comeback is
tennis.
too big, right? He comes back from 2 sets to nothing and then comes back. And
Yeah,
like
I
he
mean,
was
it's
really
not
getting worked also.
definitely not unheard of, right? Like think about that famous Nadal Federer Wimbledon final in 2008. Nadal was down 2 sets to none, I think,
And he was he
and he won.
dominating in those 2 sets though, the first 2 sets, or were they close 2 sets?
No, they were close, I think. I'm looking it up right now. Um, oh, sorry, it was the other way around. It was Nadal won the first 2 sets, 6-4, 6-4, and then Federer came back and won the next 2 sets, but Nadal obviously won the final set. So I
Mhm.
guess it's not quite the same, but it was close. Like it was being 2 sets down is not
But 2 sets down where you're
it's
getting
not a death.
dominated,
Yeah,
like
I mean, you could. It's not unheard of.
it's
Honestly,
not
it
unheard
really
of. Okay,
isn't.
I don't know
Yeah,
tennis well
I'm
enough,
thinking
but
about the 2018. Was it 2018 or 29? Maybe 2019 with Djokovic and Federer. Let me see here.
do you agree though
Yeah,
in
look, I mean,
sports
it's
movies
not.
in general,
If
they make
someone's
it
down 2 sets to none, I'm betting on the person who's up at that point. Obviously, right? Like I'm not gonna say like it's the most common thing. You know what I mean?
I'm wondering how often it's even happened. Like you've mentioned a couple times, but like I'm not saying it's impossible, but like
Yeah,
I think sometimes, and maybe this was a bad example. Maybe I don't know the sport well enough. It's possible, but like I felt like sometimes sports movies make, for dramatic reasons, understandably, like they make the comeback too ridiculous,
yeah.
or they
Well, you
make
could, yeah.
or they make people
I,
do things that would never happen. Where it's like this guy, once he starts to like not play well, I guess it was meant to be like he's a little bit mentally weak, maybe. But once he starts to not play as well, or once Paul Bettany's Peter Colt starts to play a little bit better, this guy starts like like choking, like
Maybe it's an
legitimately
inexperience
choking.
trying to poke at the inexperience versus the
Yeah,
seasoned. You know what I mean? Yeah, I can see what you're saying. You could make it just be close. You could just make it closer, right? Instead of having
yeah.
a wild
Or have it be like he
swing one way or
got
the other.
killed. It was close the first set, gets killed
Yeah,
the second set, and he's like a little bit like worn
Right.
down, doubting himself. I don't know. It's not like a biggest problem, but in general, I find that, and I'm not the first podcast to make comments of this. I think like on the rewatchables, Bill Simmons will be like, they should hire me as like a sports consultant for movies because sometimes things will happen in a movie that like would never actually happen in the actual sport. I
Right. But
don't know if that
that's
I don't know if that happens in this one per se. I do think in Challengers, making Mike Feist's character that good is a little bit of like making him too good. I think that they should have made him like worse in terms of how many Grand Slams he won.
yeah.
But like that's an example of like, hey, make sure you mean to make him like the best player of the last 10 years, basically. Like, or one of the best players
Yeah.
of the last 10 years, as opposed to being like a top-notch good player. Fine. That's all I
Okay.
gotta say on Wimbledon. I
Yeah.
like this movie. Um, I don't know if we really spoke about enough why we like it, but it's hard to capture what makes this movie just pleasant and
It's the
enjoyable.
same reason. It's the same reason I like Fever Pitch, right? Like there's just something
It's just
like
it's optimistic.
is it the most like is it the best story? Like yeah, it's just exactly optimistic. What do you mean it's optimistic? Yeah, optimistic,
It's light,
cheery, light.
feels good. It's just like enjoyable. It's just
You
good.
know,
Sometimes
and
you need a movie
especially
like that.
today, you don't see a lot of that, right? You
No,
don't get a lot of that.
it's not in favor now. Even like
No.
when we've talked about some romantic comedies that have been made recently, like Anyone But You. That movie's
Yeah.
mean spirited.
Yeah, because like you said, things are just a little bit more cynical content is in,
Yeah.
right? Um, you can't
It's
get things that are just pure. Like this is just pure,
and
right? Like
listen,
there's no
I like cynical a lot of the time, but once in a while you sit down to
time and a
something
place. I
pure.
agree.
And
Yeah.
what like I sit down for this movie, when I sit down, I had a smile on my face beginning to end. I was like, I like this movie. It's just good.
Yeah.
And that's,
No, yeah, I
two
agree.
thumbs
It's
up for
very,
me.
yeah, same. Of course, it's the same for me. And it's, it's kind of like a tradition to watch it around this time of year. So,
I'm
I
glad
would
we could
encourage you to start following. Um,
I'd encourage all the listeners to start following.
I was saying Wimbledon. You should start following the tournament because you're
Oh,
right.
I thought you were saying you were encouraging me to start following the tradition of you watching the movie every year.
You could do that too, but
Okay.
yeah.
Neither will
Anyway,
likely happen, but we'll find out.
yeah,
If you like
it's
Wimbledon, which I know
well,
you
you could go to
did,
the. You're close to the U.S. Open. Will you go to the U.S. Open?
I've gone before.
Yeah, I
it's
also
very
have
physical. It's a very physical tournament. It's very hot. You got to sit on the benches. It's tough.
crowded,
It's tough.
crowded in the
I
complex there.
My
Yeah,
friends like to talk about like who can and can't handle the heat. I don't know if I could
yeah.
handle a full day of those things.
But you go at night. You can go at night, right?
Maybe I would go. My friends are like really into it. They'll go all the time.
I
Like
mean,
I
it's
said,
great.
one of my good
It's
friends who I've
yeah.
mentioned on this podcast before. I think I mentioned it on the Match Point podcast where I talked about
Morty,
like what?
Morty.
No, different. Morty likes tennis too, but a different friend of mine, Momo Schlam, he loves tennis. Biggest. I used to take tennis lessons with him as a kid. Loves tennis. He's the one I mentioned that like had he like hit around with some like tour kind of like challengers level
Hmm.
players at his like neighbor's house. I think I mentioned that story in the pod. Recently, he's gotten some lessons from former tour player Noah Rubin, I believe his name is. Have you heard of this
Is that
guy?
guy? He's Canadian, right? Or no?
No, I
Is he
think he's from
Canadian
Long
though?
Island, I believe. Yeah, he's from Long Island. He former Wimbledon junior singles champion.
Oh yeah.
So bringing him up. So what reminded me of that, why I bring it up, is like he's a little bit like obviously less successful than Peter Colt, but he's kind of like a Peter
Not
Colt
much. I
level.
mean, yes, but his highest ranking was 125.
So he's kind of like
But yeah,
he's worse than Peter Colt's fictional player, but like it just reminded me of that because in this movie Peter Colt's like going to like give lessons at a country club, you know. Um,
yeah. That's
so
this
that's
guy's play. Yeah, that's cool. That this guy Noah Rubin he's played in all the majors.
he took a set off or he took a something off Federer once or something. My friend was telling me, I don't know, but that just reminds me of that. So it's tennis season. I don't know if I'll make it out to the U.S. Open, but we'll see. So if you like Wimbledon, sorry, what should you check out?
So for me, it was we kind of touched on it before, but the Richard Curtis thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Notting Hill, uh, is the obvious fit here. Um,
I like when we have the same
but
picks because then we're on the same
yeah,
wavelength.
because like other than that, I mean, these obvious ones, like actually they're not. I don't know. That would
Would
be
you,
my pick.
okay,
That's
that's
yeah.
your pick. What about
But
Fever
it's more
Pitch?
that it's more than just like the fact that it's a famous person with a not as famous guy, or in the case of Notting Hill,
It's just the
a
vibe of the
not famous.
movie.
It's just the vibe. There's this British vibe to it. There's a
Yeah.
London vibe to it.
Yeah, I didn't
Um,
think about the famous person aspect at all. I really focused on like this feels like it was made by the same people.
yeah, yeah. Like you could have seen Hugh Grant playing Peter Colt if this movie came out 10 years earlier.
It would have been a little bit more slapstick, but yes.
Maybe.
Because
Like,
like those like Notting Hill's a little bit more slapstick, I think.
yeah, yeah, I guess. Yeah. Well,
Which
Notting
the
Hill is, yeah, but Hugh Grant could, yeah, okay, fair
and this
enough.
movie has remnants of that with the James McAvoy character.
Right, right.
I would say Fever Pitch also uh
Yeah.
the American version. I would also say For Love of the Game because I recommended Wimbledon like for that movie. I think there's similarities there too. Um, this is my real pick though, and this is because of James McAvoy. And I don't know if you've seen this movie, Starter for 10. Have you ever seen Starter for 10?
No, I've never even heard of it.
I don't know how
I'll
I
pull it up.
watched this movie, but it's basically about James McAvoy. It comes out 2 years later, and he basically is playing like a college, like a
Oh,
working class kid who gets a scholarship to like a good college. He gets involved in some sort of love
yeah,
triangle, and he get put on this like college trivia game show.
I have heard of this actually. Is this worth a watch?
It's good. It actually is. I liked it. It's much more well received than I would have realized, like in terms of its ranking. Let me quickly search my phone to see if I had any thoughts about it when I watched it. Um, Starter for 10. I think I
Oh,
liked
Benedict
it.
Cumberbatch is in it.
Yeah, I think I liked it, but didn't think it was like amazing. Here was
Oh,
my
good
comment
reviews.
from 2020, November 10th, 2020. I texted my sister, Starter for 10, a good movie. That's not when I watched it though. I said I don't know why, but you just reminded me. So that's not when I watched it. Okay. So I don't know when I watched it because I don't have a text about that, but I watched it earlier than 2010, 2020, sorry. And I seem to have liked it. Um, I used to just say
Well,
a movie was good. That was my full review. A movie is
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
And I still do
Starter
that
for 10.
sometimes, but I remember being like, this was good, not like, oh, this is amazing. I'm telling everyone to watch it.
Yeah.
I preferred Wimbledon to it, for example. But it is good and seems to be well
Seems
received
interesting
by
actually.
others. I
Yeah.
would recommend people checking it out. Um, Before we close out, I'm gonna try to see A Quiet Place day one in the coming days. We for
Yeah.
those
I
who
know I
listen,
said it was on my list, but I don't know when I'm going
yeah,
to be able to get out to see it. I'll try.
for those who listened last week, we went through movies that we're excited to watch for the summer. Alone mentioned A Quiet Place Part One. I did A Quiet Place Day One. I had
Day
never
one. Yeah.
seen the first two. I watched the first and second ones. I didn't write my review for the second one. My
Yeah.
review for the first one was good movie. I liked it. I gave
Yeah.
it like 85, I believe, like a cinema. I liked it. It's good. It executes on its premise well. The problem with both these movies and movies like this in general, they're predicated on characters doing very dumb things usually, but I'll forgive them. The second one I think is a similar quality movie, but I kind of compare it to like Alien versus Aliens, even though I like Aliens better than like the movie Alien. Alien is like kind of like a quiet claustrophobic horror movie, while
Yeah.
Aliens is more of like an action
Yeah. Yeah.
thriller movie.
Yeah.
Quiet Place Part 2 has a lot more, it's a lot louder of a movie. It's a lot more action. There's a lot more like, the
I've
first
heard
one
it's people say, or maybe it's just Wikipedia said that someone reviewed it like Jurassic Park mixed with Alien kind of vibe,
kind
right?
of,
Like,
yeah, it's a little bit
yeah.
more like the first one kind of used like the threat of things to create fear. And the
Right,
second one, it's
right.
more
I
like
think
they're actually
yeah,
battling the thing
I remember
itself.
that from the first one, that it was more,
Yeah, because they
I,
couldn't defeat it. The monster was undefeatable till the end in the
right.
first
And
one.
in the second one, which I haven't
Uh,
seen, it's more,
I'm
I know the
curious.
premise, I know what the premise is.
Yeah,
So like,
and this prequel, which John Krasinski is not involved in, but he will be writing and directing the third one.
I saw that there's a th right,
I'm more
yeah.
interested in the third one because not to spoil the second one at all, but like the first 10 or 15 minutes of the second one is what
I think
happened
I've
on day
seen
one of the invasion.
right. I remember it with the
So it's like,
baseball field. I think I
yeah,
have seen,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So we
yeah.
don't
I
need a
think I have
whole
seen
movie,
part of it.
maybe, but and the reviews have been kind of slowly falling for the newer one, but I'm sure it's pretty good. still like a decent
It's
win.
always like that. It comes out, oh, it's got 98 on Rotten Tomatoes,
Yeah.
and then you look a week later and it's down to like 68. You
I'm
know,
still I'm
like
still gonna check it out. Other than that, that's really I've been watching The Bear. I like The Bear. I know you don't watch it, but shout out to those who
yeah,
watch The
I don't
Bear.
know. Couldn't get
What have you
into
been
it.
watching?
Honestly, at night I watch One Tree Hill in bed. That's it.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, brother.
We've been rewatching it.
I
So
mean, I'm watching for the first time.
I'm moving very slow with it.
I
I
haven't
fall
watched in a
asleep. Like
couple
I watch it
weeks.
at night, I fall asleep.
I'll randomly get a call from Pinchas because he's watching it with his
Oh, because he's
wife.
watching it
And
also,
he's
yeah.
watching with his wife, and he'll randomly call me, be like, "I can't believe this happened in season 2, episode
Yeah.
1." Like, and like you
It's
know how
pretty I go between like, wow, this is awesome, between this is just insanity. Like
it's
the whole thing
it's
with Haley's parents. I was telling you about that. We were texting about that last week, you know. But
maybe
yeah,
one day we'll have our
now
own.
I'm at the Andy part. Andy's a good guy, you know. I don't remember exactly how it
Oh
ends.
yeah, Andy, of course. Maybe one day we'll get a off screen on One Tree Hill
We should start doing stuff
episode.
like that.
But nothing more important for adult men than recapping a teen drama that ended 15 years ago or
Listen,
something. But
yeah,
we don't judge.
it's perfect for what I go to bed pretty early and I'm very tired and I just have it on and I fall asleep after 20. It works out.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So that's all I got for today. We're not sure what we're gonna do next week. Um, now it's July 4th week, things going on. Um, Hopefully we have an episode out next week. If not, we'll
yeah,
definitely have one in 2 weeks. And when I say definitely, I mean hopefully.
yeah.
Um,
I think we should commit to it because we already haven't done a. Should we say what, or should we
what we're
keep it
doing
under
in two
wraps?
weeks.
Yeah,
Okay. So what we're planning on doing in 2 weeks is watching Twister and then watching Twisters
yeah.
and doing like a
Because
joint review of them. I've never seen Twister. Twisters we discussed on last week's episode. So
yeah,
we figured instead of doing 2 separate episodes for that, let's just make it one episode. So that's the hope when that comes out
because we don't
around
do
the 19th.
and our lot. You know, we don't do it. I realize we don't do a lot of new releases. So maybe
Yeah.
it's time to sort of now it's the summer.
It's
It
hard
appears
because
like they're trying to position it as a blockbuster, I guess,
yeah,
sort of,
the
right?
problem with
So
doing new releases, at least in my opinion, is that if you miss kind of, and we've done a couple,
it's a
is that
very
if you,
small window.
yeah,
Yeah,
like it's like
I agree. It's a small window.
yes. So unless it's a big hit, like when we did Oppenheimer a month later, I was happy doing Oppenheimer because like lots of people still were watching
Yeah,
Oppenheimer. We've done a couple new releases. We did Oppenheimer. We did
Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible. That might be it. I can't
Yeah,
remember. I mean,
I think so,
this is
actually.
episode 29, I believe. We're getting up there in numbers.
Part of that is my fault because it's harder for me to get out at night
We
to
will
do it.
we win and lose as a
I,
team. We don't blame
it's
each other.
true.
We win and lose as a
There are
team.
some I make like I'll make an extra effort. Like for
Yeah.
example, well, you know, like I saw Challengers like 2 months after it came out, right? Like,
Twisters will make an
but
extra effort for.
Twisters I'm interested in, so I'm gonna make a bit of an extra effort to go.
So hopefully you've been listening to this and hope or watching this. Hopefully this video part works and it's uploaded on YouTube and you're watching this and enjoying it. If the video actually gets posted, fingers crossed, and you like it, let us know
Yeah.
because then we'll be more likely to continue doing it and maybe put in more effort to make the video better.
And we
Um,
hope you've enjoyed the backgrounds because I had
yes.
trouble blurring my background
Yeah, in
and
solidarity,
uh,
I unblurred my background for
and I
Alon.
appreciate that.
That's how I said we win
So
and lose as a team.
yeah.
This is a team.
You know what? It's not it doesn't really matter, I guess, right? It's fine.
No, definitely not. It looks good. So, if this is on YouTube, then you should be subscribing to our YouTube channel, which it's probably called like Off Screen Media or Off Screen on Film, something
Yeah,
like
it's true.
that.
It's not established yet. Yeah.
I made a
Oh, you do
YouTube
have
page.
one.
I made
Oh,
one
okay.
for us a while ago, but I never
Okay. So
activated it.
it's lying dormant.
It's lying dormant. It was waiting for our arrival.
Yeah.
So, as always, I'm Yisrael. Even though the video says Alexander, I'm Yisrael. That's Alone. We are Off Screen on
See ya.
Film. See ya.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.